remember this one night shift specifically. It was my first and thankfully my only night at this old data entry firm. I was a student then, barely making ends meet, and the lure of midnight to 6 a.m. pay with nobody around to bother you sounded like a dream. Just me, a mountain of invoices, and the profound silence of a building built for 9-to-5ers. I pictured myself cranking out data, maybe catching up on a textbook between entries. Kid, I had no idea. The building itself was a relic. Concrete cube, 3 stories, probably built in the late 70s. Inside, it was a labyrinth of cubicles, all bathed in the sickly yellow glow of ancient fluorescent tubes. During the day, I'm sure it bustled, but at night, it was a tomb. The air was perpetually stale, smelling of old paper and something else. Something metallic, almost. I just chalked it up to ozone from the old servers. I walked in that first night, punched my time card, and headed for the cubicle they'd assigned me, tucked away in a corner near the main server room. Frank, one of the older guys, was already there, nursing a cold coffee. Frank looked like he'd been carved from the building's dusty walls. Stoic, weathered, perpetually tired. His skin had that pale fluorescent light complexion, and he had a habit of meticulously bending and unbending paper clips, never quite looking at you. "New guy, right?" he rasped without looking up. His voice was like dry leaves skittering across pavement. "Yeah, first night," I chirped, trying to sound chipper, despite the immediate chill the silent, empty office gave me. He finally glanced at me, his eyes dark, flat, and utterly devoid of humor. "Got something for you." He pushed a folded piece of paper across his desk. It was a scrap from a legal pad, torn unevenly, and the handwriting was a frantic, almost desperate scrawl. Not Frank's neat, economical script, but something hurried, agitated. I unfolded it. 5 rules, numbered, stark, and utterly baffling. 2 a.m. When the ticking starts, don't look at any clock. Don't look at your watch, the computer, or the wall. 3:17 a.m. Lights flicker in the main hall. Walk away from your desk, towards the break room. Don't look back until they're solid. 3:45 a.m. If whispering from the empty office across the hall begins, anything. Loud enough to cover it. Stop when it stops. 4 a.m. If you smell ozone and old dust, like a burning circuit board, hold your breath. Get out of the building. Don't come back until it's gone. Anytime. If you hear a scraping drag from above, under no circumstances go upstairs. Stay at your desk. I stared at the paper, then at Frank. "What is this?" I asked, a nervous laugh catching in my throat. "Some kind of initiation joke? You trying to scare the new blood?" He finally met my gaze, and a shiver went down my spine. His eyes held a depth of weariness I'd never seen before, a profound soul-deep exhaustion. "Just follow them," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "You only got this one night to get through. Just follow them." He pushed his chair back, stood up, and shuffled towards the break room, leaving me alone with the humming servers and that unsettling piece of paper. My gut churned. He looked genuinely serious, the kind of serious that makes you question if you're suddenly in a horror movie. My first instinct was to laugh it off, crumple the paper, and get to work. But there was something in Frank's eyes, a genuine dread that clung to him like static. I pocketed the paper, trying to shake off the profound unease already settling in my chest. This was going to be a long night. The first hour was a blur of trying to focus on invoices, while my mind kept drifting back to the paper in my pocket. I'd pull it out, read the rules again, dismiss them as absurd, then feel that cold knot tighten in my stomach. The silence of the office was different now. Before it was just quiet. Now it felt attentive. Every creak of the old building, every subtle shift of air in the ventilation system made me jump. I could hear the faint hum of the server room behind me, a low, constant thrum that suddenly felt less like machinery and more like a sleeping beast. I kept glancing at the clock, my anxiety steadily rising. 1:30 a.m., 1:45 a.m. I felt a prickle of sweat on my brow. This is ridiculous, I told myself. You're letting an old man's weird prank get to you. But my heart was already racing, the mundane click of my keyboard echoing too loudly in the vast, empty space. 1:59 a.m. My breath hitched. The digital clock on my monitor was about to flip. I squeezed my eyes shut for a second, then forced them open, staring intensely at the invoice on my screen, every line, every number. I could feel the seconds ticking away in my own chest, a frantic drum against my ribs. 2 a.m. And then it started, a low, heavy thump. Thump, thump. It wasn't a clock, not really. It was deeper, slower, resonating through the floor, through my chair, up my spine. It felt like a heartbeat, but too big, too deliberate. My eyes instinctively darted to the clock, drawn by some invisible magnetic force. It was right there, counting the seconds. A silent, glowing temptation. Frank's words and the paper screamed in my head, "Don't look at any clock." It felt like an almost unbearable urge, like a physical itch. I ripped my gaze away, forcing myself to stare at the invoices, counting pixels, tracing the lines with my finger, anything to avoid looking at the time. The ticking seemed to intensify, growing louder, more insistent, as if trying to force my eyes back to the numbers, to break my will. The very air around me felt thick, heavy with its presence. It lasted maybe 5 minutes, then it stopped. The silence that followed was so profound, it felt like a physical pressure against my eardrums. My heart was pounding, a frantic, irregular rhythm. I sat there drenched in sweat, staring at my monitor. The rules were real. This wasn't a joke. A profound chill settled in my bones, a cold knot in my stomach that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Every shadow seemed to deepen. Every mundane sound now felt pregnant with unseen meaning. I was no longer just an employee. I was a participant in some terrifying, unknown ritual. I tried to focus, to tell myself it was just an old building settling, a noisy AC unit. But the feeling of being watched, of something waiting, intensified. I kept glancing toward the main hallway, a long, dim corridor stretching into shadow. The emergency lights cast long, distorted figures. 3:10 a.m.? I was back at my desk, trying to make sense of some particularly messy data. But my focus was shattered. I kept glancing at the time, even though I shouldn't have. I felt a rising anxiety. What if I missed it? What if I didn't react fast enough? The minutes crawled by, each one feeling like an hour. My palms were sweaty. I imagined the lights flickering, distorting. What would be revealed in that chaotic dance of light and shadow? Frank's tired eyes came back to me. He knew. He had been through this. What had he seen? 3:17 a.m. And then the fluorescent lights in the main hall began to stutter. It wasn't just a flicker. It was a violent, erratic dance, a frantic, strobing chaos of light and shadow that made the hallway writhe. Rule number 2. I pushed myself up, my legs feeling like jelly. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to look back, to see what was happening in that chaotic light, to see if anything was moving in the distorted shadows. But I didn't. I walked, slowly, deliberately, towards the break room, my back to the hallway, my eyes fixed on the grimy linoleum floor in front of me. The flickering light played across my peripheral vision, twisting the shadows into grotesque shapes. I felt a sudden intense dizziness, like the floor was tilting. A faint, high-pitched whine seemed to emanate from the lights themselves, a sound that grated on my nerves. I could feel a strange, cold breath on the back of my neck, but I forced myself not to turn. I didn't stop until I felt the steady, dull hum of the break room's dim lighting. I took a deep, shuddering breath, then another. When I risked a glance back, the main hall lights were steady again, but the air felt charged, thick, heavy with an unseen presence. My skin crawled. I sat in the break room, nursing a cold coffee, trying to steady my trembling hands. My heart was still hammering against my ribs. This wasn't a prank. This was something else. Something utterly inexplicable and terrifying. I was genuinely afraid now. What if I missed a rule? What if I broke one? What then? I crept back to my desk, my eyes darting nervously towards the empty office across the hall. It was darker than the other offices, its door slightly ajar, revealing only a void. The air felt heavy around it. I dreaded the next rule. 3:40 a.m. The silence returned, oppressive and waiting. My ears were strained, listening for anything. I kept glancing at the empty office, my mind conjuring images of what? Someone whispering. But who? Or what? The hair on my arm stood on end. I chewed on my lip, trying to prepare myself. This felt deeply, profoundly wrong. 3:45 a.m. And then, from the empty office across the hall, I heard it. A faint, insistent whispering. It wasn't distinct words, just a low, guttural murmur, like a dozen hushed conversations happening at once, just beyond the threshold of understanding. It wasn't human. It had a hollow, echoing quality, as if it were coming from a great distance, or perhaps from inside the walls themselves. Rule number 3. Without thinking, I started humming. The first song that came to mind was some terrible pop tune from the radio, a forgotten earworm from my childhood. I hummed it loud, off-key, my voice cracking, trying to drown out the sound. The whispering seemed to intensify, growing louder, more urgent, more aggressive, as if it were reacting to my attempt to block it out. It seemed to swirl around me, trying to break through my humming, to get inside my head, to force its way into my consciousness. I squeezed my eyes shut, my jaw tight, forcing more air out of my lungs, making my humming louder, a desperate plea for normalcy, for a barrier. It felt like an eternity, my throat aching, my lungs burning. Then, as suddenly as it began, the whispering stopped. I continued humming for a few more seconds, my voice weak, then slowly trailed off. The silence that followed was deafening, somehow more terrifying than the whispers themselves. I was utterly drained, physically and emotionally. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. My mind was screaming, every nerve ending firing. I was genuinely terrified, counting minutes, longing for 6 a.m., but dreading what the next rule might bring. My physical state was terrible. Sweating, trembling, hyper-alert, my eyes darting at every shadow. I wanted to just stand up, walk out, and never look back. But what if something was waiting outside? What if these rules were keeping it in? Or worse, keeping it away from me? 3:58 a.m. My breath hitched. 4 a.m. Rule number 4. If you smell ozone and old dust, hold your breath. Get out of the building. This was the big one. This implied a physical danger, something that could affect my body. What was that smell? What was it a precursor to? My heart hammered against my ribs, an erratic drum. 4 a.m. exactly. A faint, then rapidly strengthening, acrid smell drifted into my cubicle. Ozone and old dust. Like a burning circuit board, but deeper, somehow organic, sickly sweet beneath the electrical tang. My lungs seized up. Without thinking, I clamped my mouth shut, pinching my nose and scrambled out of my chair. My vision swam. I stumbled, half crawling, towards the emergency exit at the back of the office. The smell grew stronger with every agonizing step, burning my eyes, making my throat ache. It felt like something was trying to claw its way into my airways. I could feel my head pounding, the lack of oxygen making me dizzy, disoriented. My muscles screamed. I burst through the door, gulping in the cold night air, coughing violently, tears streaming down my face. I stumbled onto the asphalt parking lot, gasping, my lungs burning. I stayed outside for a full 5 minutes, shivering, my body still convulsing with coughs, until the smell dissipated completely. I was shaking uncontrollably, looking back at the dark building. It felt like a malevolent beast waiting for me. My mind raced. I was safe now, right? I could just leave, run. But then a chilling thought entered my mind, pulling me back with an invisible hook. Rule number 5. If you hear a scraping drag from above, under no circumstances go upstairs. Stay at your desk. That rule didn't have a time. It could happen anytime. What if it happened now? What if I left, and it followed? What if staying out of the building was the wrong choice, when Rule 5 was active? My panic twisted into a desperate, terrifying logic. I had to go back in. I had to see the night through on their terms. Slowly, reluctantly, I crept back inside, my body screaming at me. The air was clean now, but the silence felt heavy, pregnant with expectation. I walked back to my cubicle, every step a deliberate, terrifying act of will. I slumped into my chair, staring blankly at the screen, counting the minutes until 6 a.m., 4:47 a.m. And then it started. A slow, agonizing scrape. Drag, scrape, drag. It was coming from above me. Not like the old building groaning, but a distinct, heavy sound of something being pulled across rough concrete. I was on the ground floor. The building only had one other story, just empty offices, completely deserted at night. There was nothing up there that should make that sound. My blood ran cold. Rule number 5. If you hear a scraping drag from above, under no circumstances go upstairs. Stay at your desk. My eyes fixed on the acoustic tiles above me, as if something might punch through. The sound moved slowly, directly overhead, growing louder, more defined, like something enormous was being painstakingly pulled across the floor, above my very head. The scraping stopped directly over my cubicle. A moment of terrifying stillness. Then a soft thump. Not heavy, but definite. Like something had been deposited. My breath hitched. I squeezed my eyes shut, pressing my hands over my ears, forcing myself to stay put, to not look up, to not move. I could feel the vibrations of the sound, through the floor, through my chair, a chilling resonance that seemed to sink into my very bones. I just sat there, rigid, praying for it to end. The drag started again, moving away, slowly, slowly, until it faded into nothing. The silence returned, thicker, heavier than before. I opened my eyes, trembling. The air felt colder, prickling my skin. I didn't break any rules that night. I just sat there, rigid, my muscles locked, until the first faint rays of dawn finally started to peek through the windows. The second Frank came in at 6 a.m., looking as tired as ever. I was already on my feet. I didn't bother to log out. I didn't say a word. I just walked out, punched my time card for the last time, and practically ran out of that building. I never looked back. To this day, the sound of a ticking clock, or the sudden dimming of lights, sends a cold spike of dread through me. And sometimes, late at night, in the profound silence of my own home, I swear I can still hear that slow, scraping drag from above, the heavy thump that followed. I never found out what it was, what those rules were for, what might have happened if I'd broken them. I just know that one night was enough to shatter something fundamental inside me. I'm just glad I never had to go back.